let's check out the solution challenge.
Let's do this.
Okay, I'll present my screen.
Welcome to the Google Developer Student Club's 2021 Solution Challenge. The mission of this challenge is to use Google technology to solve for one of the United Nations' 17 Sustainable Development Goals, aiming to end poverty, ensure prosperity, and protect the planet. Win cool prizes, mentorship from Google, and swag. Get help along the way from Google at training events, code labs, and hackathons. Submit your solution by March 31st, 2021. Register today. We can't wait to see what you build.
Let's get started.
Developer student clubs are university-based communities where students learn about Google technology and use their skills to solve local problems. Welcome to the Developer Student Club's 2020 Solution Challenge Demo Day.
I want to be a developer who helps my friends and share knowledge to my friends who are deaf. I really want to learn Android deeper to make new applications that will help my friends with disabilities. There are lots of new things here that I really like, but the most thing that I like is the accessibility sandbox who has live transcribe and a live caption. The application will help me, especially in class. When I don't have a volunteer next to me, I will put my application in front of me and then it will translate what the lecturer are saying. I'm really happy to see new people across the world with amazing stories. I really want to thank all who come to me and say that I inspired them, because it inspires me more.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Great. First of all, thank you for coming. And like before we start, maybe we can see a few hands, or at least comment your name, what school are you from, so I can read them. Okay. To be honest, like, this is actually a recorded talk, but thank you, for those who actually participated in terms of like commenting their names. But yeah, like, this talk is focused on introducing Flutter, especially for you guys who are in senior high school or college level who are participating, for the DSC Solution Challenge. And hopefully Flutter is one of the tools that you would consider in terms of building the innovative solutions that you have for your app or for your project. Let me switch. Okay. Great. At least the context of this talk is for us to be able to understand what is Flutter, how can we maximize the potential of Flutter in terms of like building prototype apps within a short period of time, especially for the solutions challenge. Like, I think by the end of March you should be able to create or finish your project already. So how can we harness, or what power or what features of Flutter can offer to help you achieve your goal? And on top of that, we'll also discuss the basic commands. We'll try to do a live workshop on how we can convert a design that's basically coming from someone else. Now, for example, if you have a project, then you might already be having some wireframes, some ideas on how your app would look like. Today we'll just try to convert an existing design to Flutter. I mean, like true code to actual Dart code. And on top of that, we'll learn how we can create our apps a bit more interactive. So we can just simply create stateful widgets, when to create widgets, when to separate them from a layout. And last but not least, if we still have time, we can just simply try to export an artifact or an APK from our Flutter project using a command, which you will see after the live workshop. Okay, so way back in college, I have this pet project. It's called Binary Timeout. It's kind of like a Sudoku, but for programmers. So imagine, like in Sudoku, you have to ensure that each line, each horizontal and vertical lines constitute to a perfect 1 to 9 number, whatever orientation they may be. In this specific app, it's almost similar to that. That's why I call it Binadoku. But on a high-level overview, the way you solve it is there will be a series of random numbers which are already pre-calculated, and there is this board. At your screen, you will see a 5x5 Binadoku board, in which every time you try to tap a 0, kind of like just have to switch to 1. So if you try if you try solving for 15, you have to turn on 2, you have to turn in 4, 8, for you to be able to arrive and get the value of 15. And same applies for other values on y and x axis. So it's kind of like the high-level view of the pet project that I had way back in college. I think it's still up on Google Play, but I haven't really focused on that much before. But this is written on Java. So right now I can only deploy it on Android. And hopefully, if given a chance, I can also deploy it for web app, or for desktop app, but it's not worth the effort. And a high-level overview, if you try to look at the game, it's so simple, but if you try to download it, you can actually experience it firsthand. The complexity of how I spawn the boards from 3x3 to 4x4 to 5x5, and you can see how the board is interactive every time you try to switch from ones and zeros. So on a high-level overview, you can see that there are a lot of multiple layout elements. So from the buttons, from the board, from the examples, even on the home menu button, like there are a lot of layouts involved in this one. So at least for Android, they are written on XML and with some help of Java code in terms of like how we can create components for these elements. Also for the business logic of this game, if you have experience building a game application, that really involves a lot of time. Like for example, testing if this works, how can I pre-calculate the random numbers that I will add on the X and Y axis to let the user actually solve it and not get stuck. So for example, if there's even if there's a single number that is wrong, it will definitely destroy the user experience of the user because he will be stuck on that specific part. So how can we pre-calculate that so that those kind of things will fall under the business logic that we have applied to this game. Also the third-party integration. So as far as I remember, I think only Google Play service is added here. But what if I have added like Facebook integrations, analytics, Firebase? It will involve a lot of Android-specific work again. And on top of the things that we've discussed now, like the layouts, the integrations, the business logic, everything here is written in Java, and I can only deploy it right now on Google Play. The challenge is, what if I want to deploy it on iOS? Well, at least for Android, what we use, at least for this project, I use Java, but for the standard right now, everyone's using Kotlin for writing Android applications and even multi-platform applications. Or for this one, since I've only used Java, I can only deploy it on iOS, or at least for Android. But if I want to deploy it on iOS, I now have to write counterpart layout elements, counterpart business logic for iOS, and redo the integrations again for iOS, because they are completely separate projects and completely separate platforms that I have to deal with for me to be able to port a very similar user experience, a almost identical or at least an identical design and layouts for these platforms. On top of that, like in Android, I have already experienced a ton of issues, especially for the layout. Like, how can I make this responsive for Android tablets? How can I make it responsive for smaller Android devices? So imagine the pain that I have to go through, especially for Android, because there are a lot of vendors, like for Android platform. Samsung, we have Huawei, we have Google themselves building Pixel devices. And for iOS, if we try together migrate the existing app, we will now have again to deal with a lot of issues in the layout, especially with constraints, especially with supporting iPad, SE, iPhone devices. We will have to learn storyboard. We'll have to learn view controllers. Although it's actually manageable to learn all of these things. What if you are participating, especially in this solutions challenge, and you have to create an app within a short period of time, and you want to build features as fast as you can without trying to learn all of this stuff, all of these stuff completely isolated from each other. Well, intro to Flutter. Flutter is one of the toolkits, UI toolkits created by Google, and it's an open source toolkit. You can visit it on GitHub/Flutter. All of the plugins, all of the things that you have to know about Flutter. It's also available on flutter.dev, and it's a toolkit. Now, it's not an application framework. It's a toolkit, meaning you can design all of your screens, all of your widgets the way you want it to, without restricting yourself, like what state management are going to use, what services or integrations are going to use. Flutter is a UI toolkit, so basically it's flexible and It also allows you to create beautiful UIs. Like with Flutter layout system, it's declarative. So for example, if you are tasked to create a button, you can pretty much create a button the way you want it to. So whether it's a combination of a container, whether it's a combination of a flat button or text button, you can do it just the way you want it to, for you to be able to achieve the design that you're hoping to get in Flutter. And with Flutter, you own every pixel on the screen. So if you want to align a specific button on a top left corner or lower right corner, you can do it in Flutter without having to deal with too much of complexity on how you would align them, typically on imperative frameworks, like how we do it on XML and back then in Android. We also have we also have to work only on a single code base. So for example, if you have a team working on this solutions challenge by Google or 𝗕𝗂𝘂𝗁, then you just really have to manage your Android and iOS projects on a single repository. So whether it's on GitHub or GitLab, every changes that you will make, most of the time will just have to sit on a single code base. And it's multi-platform. So as mentioned earlier, one of the issues that I've had building a complex game application is it's only available on Google Play. For me to be able to do it or upload it on iOS, I have to learn. That time, at least that time, I wasn't really aware how to code iOS way back in college. So I was just really doing pet project for Android. But with Flutter, you don't have to worry too much on studying separate and completely isolated programming languages, especially if you're building a prototype application. But again, we're also using it on my work. I'm using it as a production ready application. So it's Flutter is really a good option, especially if you're deploying to multiple platforms. And soon it will be available on web and desktop. Stay tuned for that. And now for web, it's available for beta. Okay, last but not least, thing that I want to emphasize with Flutter, is fast and productive. So productive in a way that there's a hot reload. So every time you try to change something, it will be automatically reflected, or you can actually manually hot reload it without waiting 2 minutes, 5 minutes of Gradle build times. With Flutter, the first time you try to run an app, hot restart, or using Flutter run, that might take time, but not so much. It will just probably take time less than 5 minutes, depending how big your project is. But at least the succeeding rebuilds, the succeeding changes that you want to push to a simulator or a real device, it will only take less than a couple of seconds. And it's also fast in a way that every time you try to navigate to a specific screen of your app, you can just simply change the way you load it on a router. So for example, if you want to open a specific screen, you can just simply redirect your app to it and start from there testing the app. There are a lot of things that you might want to learn on Flutter, but right now, since we have only a limited time, we can just simply start with the widgets section. So in the future, if you want to advance in Flutter, you can study state management, different services, on how we can integrate Firebase notification, how we can integrate RESTful APIs, and more. At least today, we'll just start with studying how we can convert an existing design to Flutter. How can we create new screens in Flutter? And how can we implement basic navigation? Like how can we transition from one screen to another? Okay, live coding. Well, to be honest, It's not really live coding. It's a recorded workshop, but no worries. You will see how I will build a Flutter app, without edits. Meaning, like, you'll actually see if I made a mistake, and if I made a mistake, and you can see how I would approach to fix it. So before we start, at least before you start, you should try dartpad.dev first. If you don't have Flutter SDK installed, I believe most of the things that we'll be doing for the live workshop can be achieved using dartpad.dev, but like the auto-completion might not be as good as if you try to use VS Code, but it's a good start, especially if you're using iPad, or if you're using a machine that like you don't have any SDK installed. Dartpad is a good alternative for that one. So I'll share the presentation after the end of this talk, and you can just simply press this demo. Okay, again, no, we will not be discussing how we can install Flutter, but I assume most of you here should have, at least before you continue with this talk, should have Flutter installed in their machine. So with Flutter, again, since you can deploy apps to multiple platforms, you can also build apps on multiple OS. So we can code Flutter apps on Windows, Mac OS, Linux, and Chrome OS. At least from my end, I'm using Mac OS. I'll be following the instructions that is related to the OS that I'm using. So right now, we'll not try to wait and see how things are installed here, but Flutter has offered a very, or at least a well-documented page for you to be able to install Flutter and work on it on your machine. Next thing that I'd like to advise you is, again, if you don't want to use Dartpad and you want to maximize your developer productivity by using extensions, by using auto-completion, well, better, you can use code editors such as Visual Studio Code or IntelliJ or Android Studio. At least for Visual Studio Code, it's much faster. It's much lighter on my machine, but it really depends on your preference. But one thing that you have to take into consideration is these iOS and Android setups. So these are the native specific setups. So meaning, if you want to deploy on Android, you should be able to install Android Developer Toolkit or Android SDK. And if you are on a MacBook or iMac, you can install Xcode. Again, Xcode right now is what I recommend is to work on a real Mac machine, or you can rent a Mac on the cloud. There are a lot of services, but again, it's a good start to start with Android as well if you don't have a MacBook. Okay, at least that's for it. You should install platform-specific toolkits. So at least for Flutter, these are the APIs, these are tools related to Flutter. But for the build tools, so for example, if you want to build for Android or iOS, you should really look into these two setups, iOS and Android. Okay, also for emulators, you can either use Genymotion or the out-of-the-box emulators provided by Android or Xcode iOS toolkits, or connect your real device. I recommend connecting a real device, especially if you want to reduce the load of the tasks your MacBook is using, or at least the compute power your MacBook is using. You can use a real device, but again, if you don't have a real device, an emulator is a good alternative. Okay, let's try with the UI challenge. Okay, I think we skipped this part. These were the basic commands. These are the first 3 commands that I would like you to, not memorize, but perhaps, take into consideration understanding. So, for example, every time you try to experience an error, it should come to your sense that you would have to use flutter doctor-v. So for example, if you are installing a Flutter app or Flutter SDK, you'll see using flutter doctor-v or the things that you are missing in the installation. So this is a very common way for you to diagnose if everything is correct and working fine as expected. Also, Flutter Doctor is the thing that you would probably have to send on the GitHub Flutter issue board every time you try to submit a new issue, so that everyone would know how they can help you. Because with Flutter Doctor, it displays the current version of the Flutter SDK installed on your machine. And for the Flutter Create, this is what you will use literally for creating a new Flutter project. And we'll see it in action in a few. And Flutter Run. So if you have emulator or connected devices to your machine, you can test. You can test how your app would look like on a platform that you're trying to target, whether it's iOS or Android. So there's a lot more to it, like Flutter CLI, but these are the first three that I would recommend you to start looking at. Okay, let's start with the design challenge. Please, for the design challenge, I've created this simple habits tracker app. So I have the source file for it. We'll try to understand on this workshop how can we convert an existing idea, an existing design that was probably created by someone else or was probably created by ourselves, and convert it to Flutter using Dart programming language. So we haven't discussed Dart programming language in detail, but you'll see it in a few that it's almost similar to Java or JavaScript, the languages that you have probably used. But again, if you haven't used those languages before, later I'll provide you some resources where you can get started. And yeah, this is the workshop. Let's try to, at least for the Flutter Create, this is how you would run the command Flutter Create. So right now I already have Flutter Create example 1, which is this project. It's currently open on VS Studio Code. So again, as I mentioned to you, it's a bit lighter, at least on my machine, especially for doing this recording. Like I only have a limited RAM on my machine, just 16 gigs, and yeah, it's far better than using Android Studio, especially Chrome. Okay, at least for the live coding, our goal here is to create the equivalent Flutter code for this UI design that I prepared for you. And this one, we'll just have a couple of elements that you might want to convert here. So for example, this title, this weekly report section, and this morning section. So you can see here there are a lot of elements here. So there are tags, there are labels, and there is also some sort of checkbox here. So let's try to see if we can convert it, or how we can convert it to Flutter. So again, before we start, the first command that I want you to check is flutter doctor.v. So, or -v. So -v is just the verbose flag. So whether it will display a lot more info than usual Flutter Doctor, but typically I just add the verbose flag. Okay, at least for this one, the only things that I don't have is the Leaf plugin, the Dart plugins for Android Studio and IntelliJ. It makes sense because right now I'm just using mainly VS Code, and I also have emulators connected. So right now it's using just a simulator. So this is the simulator. And if we try to create or try to use the new project or create a new project, we'll just try to run Flutter example 1. So it's still running. Okay, let's try. Okay, it's done. Now we can just simply open this for example 1. Okay, so this is the for example 1. I will just have to drag it on. Oh, right now there's no open Visual Studio Code. But yeah, I can just simply open it on my terminal. Again, this is just a personal preference. Depending on what you really want to use, you can either use Android Studio right off the bat or VS Code. At least from my end, I'm using VS Code because it's a bit lighter, especially when doing this kind of recording or live streaming, giving workshops to you guys. Okay, I think it's open here, so I think it's a bit slow. So this is recorded, but I will not do any edits in terms of, like, if I mess up, then so be it. You'll see how I should approach that specific challenge. So before we start, I will just try to run through the different files that you will have to see if you have run Flutter on your Flutter Create on your machine. So the first file that I want to mention is main.dart file. So this is the entry point. So meaning that the first command or the first set of methods that is run every time you try to enter Flutter run in your command line, or if you're using 𝗕𝗂𝗁𝗁𝗁, this is the first method that is called in your Flutter app, which is under the main.dart file. And this run app method is calling my app. So meaning it's loading the my app widgets and every widgets that you have created for your project, and this will display or render it on an emulator or a simulator for iOS, or actually on a real device. So that's the first command. You can also add some print lines here if you want to test or check if this is really the first like the first method called. Next one is the pubspec.yaml. So at least for the pubspec.yaml, this is the manifest. It's kind of like a manifest of your Flutter app. So for the Flutter versions, for the versioning of iOS or Android, you can do it specifically on different platforms. But at least for this one, at least for the Flutter version, you can do it here directly, and it will be reflected on the builds that you will have for either Android or iOS. This is also where you will be adding dependencies. So right now we only have Cupertino dependency in the assets. So for example, if you want to add assets to your file, we can just simply load it here by uncommenting this line, which we'll see in a few. Okay, at least those are two things that I want you to understand. Other than that, like for Android and iOS, in the future, if you want to advance with Flutter, you will probably have to deal with platform-specific code. But at the moment, that's not a thing that you would typically have to worry if you're starting with Flutter. Okay, so for the workshop outline, let's try to extract the assets, or at least add the assets from Figma. So the only asset that we have really is, we only have, it's a bit slow on my end. The only asset that we have is the sun. Is the sun icon here. So other than that, like most of these can be created. I'll show you how you can create them in Flutter. So In adding assets, the typical practice is to add assets folder here, assets, and open the assets folder. You will need to copy these. For me, I will have to drag my assets here. So this can be anything like images, video files, sound assets, and you can anything that you need for your Flutter app. Okay, so for this one, let's see if it's added. Okay, the assets is here. The sound PNG. Let's try to load it. No, let's try to load it in pubspec.yaml. So the path is assets and the name of the asset file. Okay, and if you have Visual Studio, you should install the extensions for Flutter and Dart so that you'll be able to maximize the developer productivity that VS Code can offer you when building Flutter apps. So that's the first step, adding assets from Figma. Next is remove the boilerplate code. So as you can see here, the initial app that you would see if you try running Flutter run, let's try it. Flutter run is a counter app. So for the counter app, it has a lot of boilerplate code. It's given so that beginners, at least newcomers to Flutter, will be able to see in a gist or in a high-level overview concept how Flutter is doing, like updating the widgets, updating the data in terms of like for interactivity. So this is the default app. But right now, let's just wait for it to run. In a few, we'll have to remove it. And we'll first try to create our screen. Okay, I think it's still building. Okay, at least the first time. Also, right now, I'm doing the recording. So it takes up some of my compute power from my machine, but if you're using it solely for building Flutter apps, it should be fast. Okay, we still wait for a couple of more minutes, at least for the first run. This will really take time, but for the succeeding run, we'll see in action how this is changing. So right now we'll just test this, changing the counter. Okay, it's compiling. It's almost there. We're almost there, but it's almost we're almost not there. Okay, let's just wait for it. Just see. Let me check. Why is okay? Web notifications. Okay. Oh, it's actually failing. It's failing for some reason. Maybe because I was using the same project name a while ago. Let's try to clean and Flutter run. So right now, every time you try to encounter those kind of issues, so at least we're doing it live, or at least no edits during recording. So right now, probably there was an issue. Like I actually created the same package or the same project name, then I deleted it. So there may be some cached value. Hopefully this is fixed. So what I did is I run Flutter clean. So it ensures that all of my succeeding runs will be on a clean slate, So meaning there's no previous artifacts, the build archives are removed completely, and the Flutter packages get. The Flutter packages get is the first thing that you would have to run, or at least automatically run for me by Visual Studio Code if you have, for example, after running Flutter clean or after adding new dependency. So this one, hopefully this will run. Yeah, I think this will run. So again, we're still here, removing boilerplate code. Yeah, we're almost there. At least for the code. So this is the design. So the good thing about Figma is if you're working with a designer, the handover is really smooth. You can just simply inspect here what are the effects, what are the drop shadow values, and this can easily be converted to Flutter values. I'll try to look at it in a bigger picture. Oh, why is that? Okay. Right now, okay, it's actually running. Alright, so it took a while, but let's see, like, how can we remove the boilerplate? So in Visual Studio Code, we have this remove all comments. So this is an extension that I use to remove literally the comments from this one. So before removing comments, I'd advise you to read this first, so at least you have a better understanding what the code for these counter app is, what are their purpose, and why are they added there. So at least I'll remove all the comments and try to run. It's the same because I haven't changed anything. Let's try to change the title. Hello 𝗕𝗂𝗂𝘂𝗂𝘀. So I'm just pressing R. You can also have it press on save. Okay, now you can see that first time run is really taking a lot of time, but for succeeding runs it should be a lot straightforward. Okay, our next goal is to create a separate screen. Okay, separate screen for home screen. Please separate file. So right now the home page is added here on the single main.dart file, but we can create a separate page file for it. So home page.dart class homepage extends. So in Flutter we have two widgets. We have stateless widget and we have stateful widget. Right now, like at a high level view, difference between the two is that stateless widget doesn't have to hold a value that changes over time, at least within the specific class. So for example, on this specific screen, hello 𝗕𝗂𝗂𝘂𝘂𝘂, this button is changing the data, the information of the state during runtime. So meaning we have to use a stateful widget. And in our case, now for creating this habits app, we will also use stateful widget, at least for the entire screen. For the stateless widget, we normally use them on parts of the app that doesn't change a lot. So for example, an image widget, an image component, a text component, or a simple label component, things like that. But at least for our case on homepage, we'll just use stateful widget. So let's try why it's homepage. Let's try to override. And we'll have to pass the state of this homepage widget. So you might be noticing some methods here already. Let's copy this first. Okay, so for this one, you can see here that there's a prefix underscore. So this only denotes that this class can only be accessed within this file. It's a matter of preference, but normally I would prefer using this instead of, because a state can only be assigned typically on a single widget most of the time, especially in a single file. So for example, we have homepage file. We should only have one homepage state and one widget class, because if you want to create multiple widgets, you can just simply separate them on multiple files. Like for example, you can add more file here for the widgets, which we'll do in a few. Return scaffold. So for the scaffold, this is just allowing us to return a bit more themed material screen for our app. So so let's see. Hello 𝗕𝗂𝗂𝘂𝘂𝘂. So let's also try to remove scaffold so you can see it. Homepage. So right now I'm just importing the file that we created in this homepage file. So right now, with the scaffold, it just follows the material theme constraints. But without the scaffold, you'll see here that it will not inherit the material theme constraint that we have set for the entire app. So as you can see here, we're using material app. Oftentimes, you'll just have to use this material app, and you can customize this from here. But you also have this 𝗕𝗂𝗁𝗀 package where you can show iOS specific design, like 𝗕𝗂𝗁𝗀 design like widgets, if you want like to target specific UI design or identical UI design for separate platforms. At least in our case, we can just use scaffold so that it will follow the material theme constraints. So right now, you can see here, if you use scaffold, it will just follow the material theming for the font, the material theming for the status bar, and the background color. So that's the first goal. Let's try to add yung weekly report screen or weekly report section. So this weekly report section at least is in its own container. That's why we call it section. So let's try to add here. So right now, we'll just concern probably on the height, but not on the width, because we're just using mobile anywhere. But in the future, if you want to create a responsive layout, you should use aspect ratio so that it won't look stretched. At least for now, let's just try to look at the height. So it's 325. The most common widget that we have to use is a column widget. So a column widget simply orients the widgets. Everything in Flutter is a widget. Scaffold, column, even the app class is a widget. Simply orients every widget vertically. So line 1, we can do like this. It's funny, like as if I'm looking at the code from this perspective, okay. Okay, that's kind of that's added there already. I think if you might notice here, it's kind of like off a bit. Let's try to add this widget called safe area. So for the safe area, we can prevent our app not overflow or not take the offset space in the status bar, especially here for iOS or devices with notch on their the top of the screen or on the bottom. Okay, for this one, we now have column. So the column just orients the widgets vertically. The other widget that you can also use is row. So these row orients the widget horizontally. So right now, since our goal here is to orient 1, 2, 3 sections vertically, we'll just use column. It's okay. This is how I design screens. So I'll just add placeholder text. We have greeting. We have morning section. We have weekly report. Okay, it's there. And one thing that we are concerned here is to update the weekly report section. So let's try to add container. So container, think of it as if it's a box that you can design, like in which you can edit the color, you can edit the size, and this is what you would typically use for creating such container like this. And if you're familiar with HTML5 or HTML, think of the container as a div, in which you can modify as well the CSS for it. So at least for the container, let's just try to add a height of 325. That's coming from the Figma. Okay, Figma. And we have the color. And we have color. Color is the red for the meantime, so we will see it. Okay. And we also have to add margins for the edges. So in the container, you can also add margins, font edge insets of 24. Yeah, that's cool. We're almost there, but not yet. Close. So next thing we have to add is yung rounded corners. So to do that, we need to add a decoration, box decoration, and we have to move yung color from here. Color and border radius. Circular. Okay. I think in our case, we can just simply update the height so it looks more rectangular than box type. Okay, looks great. I think we can adjust. So that's the cool thing about Flutter. Like, if it doesn't look good, you can just simply change the dimensions. You can simply change the color. Whatever works for you, really. Okay, so I think, yeah, the white here, hopefully you can still see it on your end. Let's try to add on box shadow. At least for container, we can also add box shadow, which is an array. I think this is an array. Okay, this is an array. And we add box shadow. I think we haven't add comma. Yun, kaya hindi siya nag-auto-correct. So for the back shadow, we can just simply copy siguro. I think we use 5% opacity, 30% blur, 4 offset for y-axis. So you can do that entirely in Flutter. So offset, we have offset. So as you can see, for x it's 0, for y it's 4. So meaning it's kind of like push a bit vertically. With the color, you can use, like, we can use mainly black something. Or gray na lang. Or it's less strong. It's a bit weak. The blur radius, it's 30. This is based on Figma as well. Okay, it's not visible. Okay, I think it's now more visible. So it looks good, right? Like, you are just adding box shadow and it's there. It's done. Okay. As you can see here, as we try to add more widgets here, we can just simply add text. Okay. If you try to add more design or components for this widget, like, it gets a bit more push, or it gets a bit more nested. So for example, if you try to add more elements here, like maybe bar chart, like the title, the subtitle, it will eventually get pushed a bit further, like, since we will have more nested widgets here. So if that happens to you, that's the time when you have to create a separate widget. So what I'm about to do right now is I'll just copy this and cut. I'll create a new widget called weekly report section .dart. Create a new widget. So previously we created a stateful widget. This time we'll create a stateless widget. Since we will not try to add interactivity for this one, we'll just try to build the widget without having to change it or having to hold its own state during runtime. Weekly report section. We have the build method, similar to the state object that we have for stateful widget. We can just simply paste the build method. So again, the build method just paints everything that you want to display for this widget. So we can add the text weekly report. So right now, let's try to run without the widget. So the weekly report here is removed, but if you try to import your section, let's see. Oh, okay, it's there. So the cool thing about creating a separate widget is, you can isolate all the changes. Especially if you're working with teams, you don't want to change a single file. Otherwise, you'll be having a lot of merge conflicts. But at least for this case, we can just simply say that The weekly report section is added here, and we can continue editing it on a separate file. So we'll just include it inside a row, so it will stretch horizontally. So right now it's kind of like a bit, since we haven't assigned an explicit width, we have to stretch it. And I guess this one, oh okay, I think we can just simply update it here so it knows when to stretch. Okay, so right now the weekly report is trying to stretch itself. Okay, what's the next? Okay, we'll just try to add the title, the subtitle. So for the text style, now we have this style and text style. So it's very declarative in Flutter. If you want to change the font size, you can just simply change the font size directly on the widget tree. And we want to make it bold. Oops. Right there. And we can also make this a bit more. Right now it's a bit centered, so let's try cross-axis alignment. So cross-axis alignment is the alignment for row by default is horizontal. So meaning if we try to change the cross-axis, which is perpendicular to horizontal, it's vertical, then we can just change. The default is centered. So right now we can change it to start, so that the orientation of our widgets or the child widgets of this row is starting from top, or displayed from top to bottom. Okay, so you can also change the main axis alignment here. So for the main axis, again, for a row widget, the main axis is horizontal, so we can either change it from and meaning it's aligned at the end of the row widget, center. And for the column widgets, it's just the opposite. So for the column widgets, if we want to orient things horizontally, like we will just have to change cross-axis alignment. But right now, we're just dealing with row for the meantime. We'll copy the report. We'll copy the subtitle. This is a cool thing in Figma. Like you can actually just copy everything here. Okay, right now there's a problem because we are using row. So I guess we actually wanted to use row, but we want to use column. Now we want to use column for orienting the two elements. So the column is, again, if we try to go back to earlier discussion, column is for vertical, row is for horizontal. But the reason why we use row here at the moment is we just really want to stretch it easily on the parent container. So for the column, there's an error. Let's try to update the width. The false. Right now you can see it's kind of like a bit more centered again. So for column, we can just simply, again, cross-axis alignment. For column, the main axis alignment is vertical. So meaning you can start or end from top to bottom. But the cross-axis alignment is horizontal, which is perpendicular to its to column. So for the cross-axis alignment, it's either right to left for a column widget. So right now we want to orient things at the leftmost part, so we'll have to orient it using start. Okay, it's almost there, it's almost similar. But yeah, let's try to check if we can add padding, because it's kind of like a bit the elements are actually at the tip of the container. So padding, and don't have to memorize this. You just have to deal with this while you were building, while you are building your own Flutter app. Oh, it's almost there. Whew, konting push na lang for the bar charts. Okay, last is we'll just have to add yung bar charts. So the easiest way, since this is hard coded, we can just simply use containers, and let's see how we can use containers in terms of changing the height of these bar charts, But ideally, if you're dealing with a lot of data bar charts, you would have to use custom painters. And there's a lot of package, especially in Flutter. They're what we call bar charts package or charts package, in which but right now we only have 7 data, so it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense for us to use custom painters and make things a bit more complicated. Right now we will be using again another row, since like we have to orient the bar charts from left or from right to left. So at least from my case, or at least from our perspective on the app, it's left to right pala. Okay, so we'll just add container. We'll just see the width, width and height. So the width and height is 12. The width is 12. The height is 129. And the color is this is how you would add custom color. You'll just see it in the code earlier, but this is just like using the hex code value. Okay, now it's almost there. Ooh. And one thing that we can do as well is we can add border radius. So that right now we can add it directly. You have to use batch decoration. Oh, yeah, it looks great. We can wrap row sa container so we can add margin. So this is how you would control the layout. Like probably 46, 48. Let's try to align yung vertical cross axis with baseline or end. Para lahat sila nasa baba. So one easiest way to do all of these bar charts is to simply copy this. But before we copy this, let's try to add yung Monday label muna. So we have to copy text. Copy text. We'll just have to add Monday. Oh yeah, that's great. So there's another space, so you can either use container or simply margin. It says only top 4, so meaning it will have to. Oh, there's an error, probably because there's a limit on the height. Let's try to adjust this one. Okay, that's Monday. And the easiest way, we were talking earlier, the easiest way for you to do this is to copy yung column. Copy, duplicate. Yeah, you can do that, like literally. But as you can see here, as we try to optimize yung code natin, let's try to see how we can extract yung bar chart and create a widget out of it. Since we're dealing with widgets in Flutter every time, why not let's just extract yung column and let's try to see what are the common properties that we can adjust. For example, the color, the height, or the label, and reuse a widget instead of copy pasting column several times. So let's try to cut it, and instead of creating a separate file, since this bar chart is only used for this file anyway, we can just simply create our own bar chart widget here with a private prefix. But again, this is just a matter of preference. Right now, I'm looking at the bar chart, and they are only used for this specific section. So it doesn't make sense to create a separate file for it again, just to to really separate it. Right now, I'm just adding it at the bottom of this class, bar item. But again, it's just a matter of preference. So right now, we just have to add the build method. And we just have to copy yung bar item. So instead of copying multiple columns, we can just simply add multiple bar items. Oh, there's an error. Probably because Okay, we haven't returned. We're just calling column, but we haven't returned. Okay, so that's the 3-bar item. I can just simply add more. Okay, now we have, our goal here is to show different variations of this bar chart. So to do that, we should expose parameters in bar item. And how can we do that? We'll just expose probably the height. We'll just expose the color using final, so meaning this can only be changed using the constructor that will be exposing color. What else? Final string label. And we'll just have to create constructor for this. So in Visual Studio Code, there's a shortcut, no? But to do this manually, you'll just have to create a constructor like this, referencing to the final properties. And let's try to see, let's try to use height instead of the default 129 height that you see for all the widgets. Let's try to change the label. Right now, I'm just adding a default null value here so that it won't show an error if I miss adding a label. What else? The color. Okay. You can also add the default values here. So the default color we want is blue. So I think it can be added here because we have no cons. Yeah, we can definitely just do that. Yeah, the height is probably default to 50. Okay, now for the bar item. Okay, so the different things that we'll now apply here are the values. So we want our first bar chart to have a height of 60, color of, and label Monday. So just have to copy it for the bar items. Thursday, Wednesday, Tuesday. Just have to copy yung color for Wednesday and change the height. Change the height for Wednesday, probably 20. Change the height for Thursday, probably, or change the color muna, and change the height to lower than, and we can also have Friday, Saturday, Saturday. So Friday, we have a lot of things that we did last Friday, so it's very productive. So let's try to make it 80. Let's try to add variations here. Let's try to 70. Try to run it. Oh, it looks good, but it's too small. I think we just simply add more values here. Oh, yeah, looks great. Oh, that's Saturday pala, no? Yeah, we can just simply change here. And I know what I'm doing is just really populating the data. And we can add individual spacers here in between, or we can just simply add main axis alignment that space around, meaning for every item or every bar chart that we have here, we'll just have the alignment. So right now it's not extending the width, perhaps. That's why it's not extended correctly. Space around. Maybe because it's not stretched. Okay, let's try to let's try to check yung colors, bakit hindi siya nag-expand. Okay, so limited yung width ng container natin. That's why. So I guess one thing that we can do is to use another row here, or here, to stretch and expand. I think there's been some issues. Yeah, I think right now, because we don't have explicit width for this one, so I think we have to, let's try to expand it here. Like, okay, I think they're already expand except for this part. One thing that we can do here is we can just simply add the width for the meantime and not deal with these issues for now. Okay. Actually, dapat nga hindi natin i-stretch kasi maliit lang yung tinitake yung space around. That's why. Yeah. Kaya ayaw nilang i-expand. Ayaw Flutter i-expand kasi we just have to use limited space dapat. Okay, that's great. And we can just simply remove the color. So I'm using color normally if I have to check the widgets. Okay. We're almost there. And like, I think this is a good start. Like we now have discussed how you can create a new Flutter project, how you can create a new or add a new assets in Flutter, how you can create a new screen in Flutter. Right now we created homepage and we're loading the weekly report section, and right now we also tried creating our own widgets that we can reuse, especially for the bar item. Like, it's trivial to add spacing all around or add column widget individually. Right now you learned how to reuse a widget by exposing the parameters and the values for the colors, really. And for most cases, that's kind of like really like the things that you have to learn in terms of like creating widgets in Flutter. Now let's try to see how we can at least for now, like, since I will leave this one as a challenge for you, the morning habits. Okay, for this one, let's try to create or navigate to a new detail screen. So for the new detail screen, right now we don't have the detail screen without the habits. Okay, so at least like, nandiyan na. Yeah, like the habits here are added. So I added it just this here. So I can now check or uncheck this one, but it doesn't have states. So at least for the habits, like, it's very straightforward, almost similar to what we did earlier. Like, we had just the title, the subtitle, and we added it as a separate widget. As a separate widget named habits. Habits section. And for the habits section, we'll just simply have we'll just simply have to use this, and you will return a value to the build method. So we just actually copied yung things that are added for the weekly report. And at least for this one, it just contains the title, the subtitle, and for the row, these individual rows, I will leave it to you as a challenge to create multiple row of habits. Okay, and as you can see here as well, we have a tag, and a tag, we can have single tag or multiple tags. So right now we only have single tags, but if you want to create multiple tags, you can just create children of row. Children, copy paste row. You can have multiple children's with row. For minute, we'll have to space 𝗕𝗂𝗂𝘁𝗵. So it will be a daily. Okay, and that's how you would typically how to create tags. Right now, everything here is hard-coded. You can also use list view builders if you want to like dynamically load the widgets that we will add here on the tags. But our goal here right now is to understand how can we make it a bit more interactive. So one of our outlines here is to check or uncheck habits. So given that we are using a stateful widget for our homepage state, let's try to see how we can really store the value of this one. So at least for the habit section, one thing that we can do is we can convert this to a stateful widget. So we can either save it in the entire home page or this widget only. So meaning every time we try to call setStateLater, this is the only part of the app that gets rebuilt instead of the entire home page. So if that makes sense, like we can just simply use stateful widget for this section. But again, you can also do it inside the home page. But if you try to look at it, like it makes sense if you just really do the stateful widget where storing the values, whether this one is checked or unchecked within this section. Because if we try to save it on the home page and we try to call setState, yung entire page na to magre-rebuild, which is right now, if you try to look at it, like it's still fast, but if your app gets a bit more complex, if you can segregate state changes, data changes in a small widget, or in a small section of your app, then do it. Eventually, like in the future, you might be using provider or state management like Mobex or Block. That's where you actually have or can put your state changes. But right now, since we don't have anything like state management like that, we'll just have to store it within the section class. Again, like state management, it's a fairly complex topic, but like setState, it's a good start in terms of like managing your state. You don't have to start with complex state management right away. Otherwise, you'll end up learning state management per se, not learning Flutter, at least the concept of widgets right away. So right now, we'll just store the value here. So whether the water desk plant is checked or unchecked. So bool is water plant checked. Let's default it to false. Let's call the value and assign it to the checkbox. And let's try to change it to is checked. So right now I use hot reload, but since we converted it to stateful to stateless to stateful, from stateless to stateful widget, we need to do a full restart of the app. Seems, yep. Okay, since we don't have the reference now from the previous three what the widget is or what the widget type is. So right now we can now simply use hot reload and we try to check or uncheck. Nothing is happening. Again, because right now what we're doing is we just simply assign the values. For example, if you try to check the bool flag, it's just saving the value, but it's not really notifying the UI. It's not notifying the UI that, hey, you have to render this widget again because there is a state change. So to do that, we have to use the most basic state management in Flutter, which is setState. And now if we try to hot restart it, and we try to uncheck, check, uncheck, or it's the opposite, check, it should be working. So what happens here is previously we're just using this line. So it's, even though it's saving, your widget is not rebuilding. So without the setState, your app will not notify, or the Flutter framework will not notify that they have to call this, it has to call this build method again, because the build method is what's responsible again for painting the widget that you want to display on the screen. So without the setState, like pretty much you're changing the value, but you are not reflecting the value. So that's the most basic way how you manage state in Flutter. Next thing we have to do in the workshop. So at least for the add morning habits section, it's a bit straightforward, similar on what you learned for the weekly report. You will just have to apply similar concepts using rows, using columns, using containers. And for the unchecked check habits, we're just using set state. But in the future, you may want to use state management approach such as provider, such as 𝗂𝗵𝗶𝗶𝗀 block. But again, for these kind of hackathons for prototyping, set state can actually work fine, or even provider. No. Okay, the last activity that we have is to navigate from these single habits of water detail to a detail screen. So how can we do that? Well, first, we can't navigate to something if it doesn't exist, so we have to create a new file. Detail page. Habit detail page. To be more specific, let's try to create a stateless widget, since we will not be doing anything here. It's just a static page. And let's just do it the most basic way possible. Welcome to my habits. Oh, it's not actually a container, but rather a text. So that's the power of Flutter, you know, like iterating through changes is super fast. I want to center a text, I'll just add center. I want to add this text, I just use a text. So it's declarative. And whatever you try to add here, you kind of like, you know, thinking, you know, that this will be the output of my Flutter code. So declarative, you know, a way of doing UIs, you know, it's kind of like one of the mainstream right now, in a way in which like it lessens, you know, the cognitive load for developers to think like and compute what would be the output of this code. You know, at least as we see the code here, oh, it's centered. Oh, it's a text. Oh, so maybe it's a text that is centered as, you know, like if it's output as its output on the screen. So that's how kind of like declarative way of doing UIs works. It's less cognitive load for the developer, and it's easy to understand by just reading the code. Okay, habit section. And what we want to do here is every time we tap the water desk plant. So let's try to look at where's the water desk plant. Okay, so this is the water desk plant. So there are many ways how to achieve it in Flutter, but one way to do it here is to use Cupertino button. You can also use text button. But yeah, just to show you how you can import, you know, Cupertino side by side with material, let's just use this one. On press, meaning every time I try to tap this Cupertino button, I will execute whatever is the code inside here. I'll just try to navigate. Right now we will not be using push name since we haven't set up our routers. Let's just try to use push. So I haven't memorized this, but let's try to use real page route. And the name of the page. So the name of the page is habits detail page. But it's not imported. So let's try to see if it works. Ooh, it works, but it doesn't look great. So let's try to add scaffold here. Again, for the scaffold, it makes us, you know, like allows us our screen. Normally, you would have to add one scaffold per screen for you to be able to, you know, use the constraint of the material app. App bar. This is how you can add app bar, meaning the things that, you know, like the things that you've added at the top. Okay, and woohoo, almost there. But one thing that we can do so that we can make it a bit more interactive is we can expose again another parameter. So probably name of the habit. Welcome to your habit, and this is how you would include a variable inside a string in Flutter. So you will use $sign so that it will interpret as this value has has value on runtime from a variable, and to do that, you know, to pass the value. And now if we try to run it and open it, this will be none since we are not actually passing anything. But if you want to pass a value here, you can use like water gas plant. Yeah. Woohoo! This is your habit, water gas plant. Okay, that's at least for the navigation, but I think we can improve the design of these a bit. Let's remove the default padding. Zero. I guess that's kind of like what's bugging me. Okay, yeah, that's great. Woohoo! Yeah, looks great. I mean, we only spend less than an hour to do this, but like you are now creating complex UI. And you know the tags. Now I leave it to you as a challenge how you can reuse the tags. Perhaps you would like to expose a title, you would like to expose the color, a dynamic width or height, things like that. You know, like they are fairly simple, and with Flutter it makes it easier for you even not to implement those. Okay, to end this talk, I'll just leave you with action items. I'll just share with the organizers the design that I used for this project. And you know, like action item, just continue doing or copying the exact design. You can also look for other inspirations on Dribbble or App Labs. And as an immediate action item as well, you can try to start with this code lab. So this code lab is uploaded on the official Google developers website, in which you can follow along with a series of steps how you can display a list, work with list view in Flutter. Resources, official websites as flutter.dev, darter.dev, and for the code labs, this is the link. Okay, that's pretty much it for me. If you have any questions, like you can contact me on my email, which I'll just share with the organizers, or if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me on my Twitter account, 𝗕𝗂𝗂𝘂𝗁, and yeah, I'll see you soon. Bye bye.
Saya dilahirkan di Bojonegoro. Ibu saya mendidik saya boleh bermain, tapi bermainnya itu nggak boleh jauh-jauh. Terus saya melihat kakak saya kebanjiran, yang paling parah itu tahun 2007, di mana rumahnya itu sangat tenggelam, banyak korban jiwa yang ditimbulkan, dan kakak saya itu kehilangan.
Kemarin ya lumayan, kemarin. Ya.
Kalau airnya semakin tinggi kan, nggak bisa lalu lintas kendaraan kan nggak bisa lewat, kita biasanya pakai perahu. Palingnya kalau udah agak parah lagi kita ngungsi.
Warga juga pasti resah, kalau enggak sebelumnya belum diberitahu kan resah. Kalau sudah diberitahu kan nanti ada persiapan.
Saya ketika kuliah di PENS ini, saya pertama kali tahu DSC itu dari Dana. Seharusnya kita bisa menghindari hal buruk terjadi ketika kita mengetahui apa yang akan terjadi. Dana membantu saya sekali dalam hal tersebut bersama tim untuk membuat aplikasi 𝗕𝗂𝘂𝗀.
Alatnya itu bersifat kayak misal di sini bakalan ada banjir, dari pemerintah bakalan langsung, tidak berdasarkan yang sebelumnya berdasarkan data kami, itu berdasarkan dari WhatsApp. Nanti setelah itu penduduk bisa ke posko terdekat. Di sini ada lokasi-lokasi poskonya. Terus kita bisa kayak ngeset arahnya belok kiri maupun belok kanan gitu ada. Karena kita memanfaatkan teknologi arahan juga dari Google. Oke, sudah selesai?
Oke, selesai. Oke. Kemudian kita mencoba ke sana, kita menunjukkan ke warga Bojonegoro.
Kalau sekarang kalau ada aplikasi ini kan bisa langsung masuk ke HP-nya masing-masing. Jadi semua warga langsung otomatis langsung tahu.
sini kita milih Balai Desa
Mulia Agung,
Arah.
Ya.
Di sini kita bisa lihat di posko ini ada berapa banyak orang.
Membantu banget berarti ya, sangat amat membantu.
Iya. Ini rencana emang akan kami rilis ke Bojonegoro ini.
Oh gitu ya.
This is the power of 𝗕𝗂𝘂𝗁𝗂 students all over the world. We can learn and teaching together and also to solve local problems.
Dengan adanya aplikasi 𝗕𝗂𝘂𝗁𝗂 ini, saya merasa sangat senang sekali saya bisa membantu warga masyarakat Bojonegoro, terutama untuk kakak saya.
Developer student clubs train thousands of student developers globally and work with their communities to solve real-life problems. Google selects amazing students from across the globe once a year to be a developer student club lead and start a club on their campus. These leads believe knowledge is power and that technology can do extraordinary things for the world. They take on the responsibility to help students learn and empower these students to solve real problems around them. Join us in building a global community for students.
Let's check out the solution challenge.
Let's do this.
Okay, I'll present my screen.
Welcome to the Google Developer Student Club's 2021 Solution Challenge. The mission of this challenge is to use Google technology to solve for one of the United Nations' 17 Sustainable Development Goals, aiming to end poverty, ensure prosperity, and protect the planet. Win cool prizes, mentorship from Google, and swag. Get help along the way from Google at training events, code labs, and hackathons. Submit your solution by March 31st, 2021. Register today. We can't wait to see what you build.
Let's get started.
Hi, I'm 𝗕𝗂𝗂𝘂𝗁𝗂 Guzman, the community lead for 𝗕𝗂𝘂𝗂𝗂𝘂. Today, we will be building apps with progressive web apps. So here are some of our objectives. First is that we'll have an introduction to progressive web apps. Second, we'll try to build a simple progressive web app. And third, as a bonus, we are going to be distributing a progressive web app to the Play Store. So let's begin. Over the years, smartphones, along with the internet, had been an integral part of society in bridging humans together regardless of distance. In few taps, one can send a message to relatives over Messenger. One can send photos or videos of joy, of hope, of sorrow, and everything in between. We use these devices to connect, to work, and to play anytime, anywhere, even in the midst of Metropolitan's never-ending traffic, and even today as we fight virus outbreaks. We've even gotten as far as using our phones to hold our cash. Truly, many of us are now living a truly digital lifestyle. Of course, the driver of all of these are native apps that we install through app stores like the Play Store and Apple's App Store. There's one saying that for anything you need, there's probably an app for that. And that's truly almost the case, given the thousands upon thousands of apps on these stores. So here are some of the pros or benefits of native apps. First is that it speaks the native language of the smartphone. It allows offline use. It's typically engaging and powerful, and it's what's available on App Store. But of course, native apps do have cons. Some of which are you do need to install it first before you can use it, and sometimes its size could be huge. But what if we look at the other option? Something that's more familiar to us. How about the web? Let's try looking at this example. Show it to anyone and ask them, what's this? Many would be able to identify what this is. It's a URL that directs to Facebook, which is a web app. Web app. So what are the pros of web app? First is that it's familiar. It works everywhere as long as you have a browser. It's easy to share, and it's equally engaging as native apps. But of course, with everything there are cons. First is that you might need internet at all times to use it. Sometimes it's not optimized for mobile. And since we're here in the Philippines, internet can be expensive. But what if we try to combine native apps, great features like being able to work offline and being equally engaging, along with the feature of web apps that it's being easy to share and being fast. So if we combine them, we would make a progressive web app. So what's a progressive web app, you might say? Well, it's your typical web app, but supercharged with native apps functionality. So we can say that PWAs are web apps, but with progressive enhancements. So some of its key features include some of the good stuff from native apps, like being able to work offline, to be able to be installed on phones or even on computers. And it's engaging because it has access to push notifications. And it also took some of the great things from the web, like it's smaller than most native apps and shareable through URLs. It's also searchable from the web. So here's a head-to-head comparison between a native app and a progressive web app. Let's try to watch that. Okay, as you can see, with progressive web app, once you click the link, you can already access it, but with native apps, you kind of do have to install it first. See? You were able to install it to your home screen with progressive web apps, unlike the one with native apps that you do have to install. You have to download the thing first, which does take time, especially here in the Philippines where internet can be slow. See, there you go. Okay, it's giving permissions. And there. So they're pretty much equal, as you might say. As you can see, the difference is big. It's way faster if you use progressive web apps than native apps. Okay, let's go to examples. Let's try looking at the international examples first. So if you've used Twitter.com, then most likely you are already able to have a taste or have a feel of what progressive web apps are. When you try to open Twitter.com, you can add it to home screen, and when you try to go offline, you can still see something. You're not going to see the dinosaur anymore if you're using Chrome. Similar with Instagram.com. So if you do not want to install the full-fledged Instagram app from the Play Store or the App Store, you could just simply open Instagram.com and add it to the home screen. It almost feels like the same thing. Let's try looking at some of the examples here in the Philippines, in the industries first. So, yeah, we have Click Shop or Click Grocery by 7-Eleven here in the Philippines. And the good thing about this is that when you're offline, you can still see the code to claim your product. So when you do proceed at your nearest 7-Eleven branch, you can see your code even without the internet. We also do have shopsm.com, so you can try adding it to your home screen. So it's way more lightweight than its native app counterpart. Okay, so some of the fun examples or possible fun uses for progressive web apps. So let's start with transportation. Transportation, the one I've said earlier is this one. So one of the pain points when you're using native apps for things like transportation is that when you wanted to get the information fast, installing apps is a friction. Meaning if it's a friction, it adds additional steps, meaning that it's going to waste your time just to do simple tasks. So since it's a pain point, it's an opportunity for progressive web apps since you don't have to install anything. So that's what you could leverage. So one of the examples that I have here is Project Trend. So this is a train tracker for LRT. This is a project that came from our ideas before with Stephen when we joined hackathons. So basically, this is a train tracker for the LRT1. So let's say I'm going to ride let's say I'm a foreigner. I don't speak Tagalog. I don't know what to ask. Where is this station? And I just wanted to know, when should I get down the train, for example. So let's try utilizing this no install technology or this feature. So what I'm going to try is to install this. Let's say I'm going to ride the LRT now, and I see the QR code posted somewhere in there. Just go and scan this and open this. Okay, and from there, it's loading. See that I could already use the PWA instead of installing it. So this increases the possibility that a user would use your app because they don't have to install it. Okay, so let's try. Okay, wait. So let's say the nearest station here is, for example, EDSA. And then let's try going to Monumento, for example. It's a little bit slow. And here, the cool thing about PWAs is that we have different APIs available already. One of this is the geolocation API, and it could actually get your location real time. So it could track, let's zoom in so you could see. Okay. So it actually tracks your speed in real time. And also, one of the APIs said was the share something API. So I have it in here. So let's say I wanted to tell my friend or my Twitter followers where I am right now. So the only thing I have to do is instead of taking a screenshot or something, I just have to tap share ride. Okay. And then a share sheet would show. Then from there I could, let's try to tweet this one. Okay, there. And from there I could already tell that I just wanted to let you know that I am at EDSA. So you may also track and share at which exact official LRT1 station you're nearby with Project Trend. So from there, diba, it's fast. Okay. And that link, actually, I've used Firebase real-time database for that. So when a friend opens that, they could see in real time where I am. It's one of the cool things of this thing. So let's see one of the examples for food and beverage industry. So this is a sample that I did, which is Quick Eats, which is, if you can scan and try that, you can order food. You can have it delivered. So it's really good when you're just really hungry and don't want it to install any app because that might take time. Also, we have some for museums and galleries. So let's have some retrospective on the word progressive. Or why choose the word progressive for the word progressive web app? Well, if we look at the word progress, it means to move forward or an onward movement towards a certain destination. As the person that coined the term progressive web apps, he said, Alex Ross, he said that progressive web apps are apps that aren't packaged and deployed through stores. They're just your typical websites that just took all the right vitamins. They keep the web's ask when you need it permission model. So if you tried opening a website and ask you for a notification, that's what it means. And it also adds in new capabilities like being top level in your task switcher or your home screen and in your notification tray. Users don't have to make a heavyweight choice up front and don't implicitly sign up for something dangerous that just by clicking on a link. Sites that want to send you notifications or be on your home screen needs to earn that right over time as you use them more and more. That's why we call it or these apps become progressively these web apps become progressively your apps that you've used to. So let's look at that progression that he just said. So when we look at the life cycle of a progressive web app, is that first it starts as a site that is in a regular tab. It doesn't have much power, but it's already built with progressive app features like being secure, having a service worker and manifest, which I will be discussing later. It's responsive design, meaning that it looks good on mobile and on desktop or any screen factor. And when you use it frequently, you can keep it on your device like an install, or as what other people call it, adding it to your home screen. So when you launch it from your home screen, these apps blend into the environment just like any other native apps that you've known. So they're top level, they're full screen, and they work offline. But of course, they work offline after the step 1, so you do have to visit it first before it becomes offline. But now, the implicit contract of happiness makes that clear. So, if you've tried that project trend earlier, you basically did that. So, once you scan the QR code or open the web app using the link or URL, you can immediately use it to write the LRT, but it does show a prompt here, if you can see on the bottom. So if you do find that app to be useful, you can add it to your home screen. So that means it kind of gained your trust. That means you need it. So the next time you wanted to use it, you can just simply look for it on the list of your apps and open it and use it just like any of your apps. So just like all of these other apps, it lives just like them. So as what I said earlier, it lives on the task switcher. So if you do try looking for it, once you've opened it, it's on your task switcher, right? It feels just like your app that you're used to. So with that, why would you build a progressive web app? First is that it works on all form factors, whether on mobile, on computers like laptops, desktops, or even smart fridges. Anything that has an access to a browser. It's ubiquitous, right? It's independent. Since this is the web, it doesn't matter if you're using an Android phone or an iPhone or whether you're using Windows or Mac. Doesn't matter. It's also cheap to make because many people are already building for the web. It's also accessible since you do not need a very powerful machine. Progressive web apps could be a great way to build for the next thousands or millions. And also, we do have crazy phones coming like Galaxy Fold and the Surface Neo. So you can take advantage of the web's screen enumeration API to make it better on new form factors. So let's look at the rising popularity of progressive web apps here in the Philippines. So why would you build a progressive web app here in the Philippines? First is that it's convenient for your use. Sorry. So let's talk about the rising popularity of progressive web apps here in the Philippines. So why would you build a PWA in the country? First is that it's convenient for your users. Next is that installation is not necessary. So that means people can already use your service quickly. Third is that it's fast. Also, Philippines has a slow and expensive internet. So, right, I mean, also it's cheaper to develop. So, yeah, I mean, you can immediately bring your progressive web apps to market even if you do not have a really big budget. And also, it works on all platforms. You can already build for Android, iOS, Windows, Mac, Linux. Doesn't matter since it lives on the web. And it's starting to be capable just like your native app. So it now has access to hardware like camera, other sensors on your phone, and also progressive web apps. As you can see on that map there, doesn't have any definite representative from the Philippines yet. Okay, so let's look at the essentials. So what do you need to have on your web app to make it a progressive web app? So as you can see there, it needs to run on HTTPS. So it's important that your web app is secure. Also, it needs to have a web manifest, which I will be discussing later, along with service worker. And you can add in some modern web APIs. So let's discuss first the app shell model. So the app shell model or the app shell, is the minimal HTML, CSS, and JavaScript that is needed to power the user interface. So just what you need to show something to your user. So that's what you tend to cache offline or save to the browser, so that you can ensure that your web uploads fast on repeated visits. So basically, this is your page with interactions and styling. It doesn't have the data. So if you're going to look at this image, the app shell is the interface that what your users would be interacting with, and what we're going to load then after are the content. So what are the different front-end frameworks or libraries you can use to build progressive web apps? So you can actually build, since progressive web app is a standard, you can actually build it with vanilla, or you may choose Angular, Vue, React, JS, Svelte, and more. So let's look at some of the requirements. So metadata. So if you were accustomed to creating native apps, then most likely you know that there's a certain file where you're going to put the title of that app along with icons, permissions, and stuff. So this is its equivalent here for progressive web app. So it's a JSON file that contains the essential info about your progressive web app, like the icons, app name, description, and more. So this is how it looks like. You can see there, we have the name, we can define if you wanted to open in full screen or not. We can choose the background color for the splash screen, and we can even define the icon. So when it gets installed, you can define which icon you want it to display on the home screen. And next is the service worker. So a service worker is the client-side network proxy. So it's like a script that acts as a network proxy that lets the app control the network request. So this is what makes your progressive web app work offline, because it serves a middleman between the phone and the network. So for example, when you're offline, you will be returning a page that you've saved. So let's say when I'm offline, show this. So that's what a proxy does, that's what the service worker does. So if you wanted to learn about different recipes or styles for your service worker, you can visit serviceworky.rs or service workers. So as you can see here, some of the caching strategies that is in that side. So you may choose your progressive web app to always get from the network, which is the standard, or you may choose cache only. So when it's cache only, it would always get the files from your phone, from the browser, instead of getting it from your server. You may also choose cache and update. So that means that you may choose either cache and update or cache, update, and refresh. So they mean that you can have, let's say you open your app the second time, it would get it from the cache, and then once you open the web app, it would try to see if there are some updates and update it on the background. Right? It's like the equivalent of having it updated from the store. But instead of doing that from the store, you would be the one that would be updating the files. And there's also an embedded fallback. So that just means that you are going to show a message or something when that resource is missing from the server and stuff. Also, there are tools that we can use to make this easier for us. So we have Workbox if you wanted to use that. But some frameworks do have support for progressive web apps so that you might not need to work with Workbox or other service worker tools. They would handle it for you. So this is the sample of a service worker. So you can see you will define the version number. So this is pretty similar with how you manage apps, where you would define a version number, and along there is where you will put the list of files or list of routes that you wanted to store or cache to the browser. You can see, and since it's a script, it has various listeners. So let's say, for example, when you install that script to the browser, it would start saving the files to the browser. There's also an event that, let's say, your web app wants to get a document or a resource. You can actually intercept that. So let's say you want to get it from the cache instead of the network, you can do so here. Okay. So with that, let's try building a progressive web app. Hello. So let's start building a very basic progressive web app so that we can see what are the essentials. So here on my left, we have the project structure. I do just have here an SRC folder where it contains initially the set of assets that we might need today. It's from a different project folder, so just paste it in there. And yeah, let's try by adding our index.html in there. Try saving that. Okay, so let's add the essentials. So if you were able to have your introduction to building websites, then this is familiar. So let's add a head tag here, and the body tag. Okay, let's add a title. For now, my application. And let's try adding something here as well, just so that we can see something when we. Let's try adding hello world. Okay, hello world. Okay, let's look at the browser. Okay, so we just added our index.html. This should not show a 404. So let's refresh. There it is. Okay. Going back, let's try adding some of the other basics. So let's try adding the meta tag for the viewport first. So that's kind of critical for making this responsive. So let's try adding meta tag for name. This is a viewport, and I want the content to be the width. Let's set the width to be the device width, so that it knows when we are using either mobile or desktop, whatever screen that is. This is the initial scale to 1.0. There you go. Okay, and then once we're done with that, so right now we couldn't see that change, but it's doing something in there. So I'll be adding some of the important scripts that I need. So I do need a jQuery library, and for this demo I'll be using Materialize CSS. So I'm importing the JavaScript file for that framework or library. Okay, so we're putting this at the bottom instead on the top because we wanted for the page to load faster. Because when we put this on top, it will block the rendering of everything below that. So we just placed it underneath so that it will load the page first before getting the scripts. So, and even to make sure, we added a defer tag. I mean an attribute for defer, just to be sure. So next, I'll be adding some scripts in there. Okay, from my. Okay, I'll be pasting it here. There you go. So basically, I'll be importing some of the CSS and JavaScript files that I need. So for this example, so I don't need that yet. It's just a function where the window loads, it'll load the list of CSS files and JavaScript that I need. So here's the list, and then I loop along each one and append them here on top, here on the head. And once they're appended, they will load. Here you go. So yeah, that's what this code does. So yeah. Okay, let's see if something changed on our page. Okay. There you go, something changed. That means our CSS and JavaScript loaded. Okay, so now where do we go next? Let's add our index.js file. Since we imported it but doesn't exist yet, let's try adding it here. So index.js, and let's add something here. .ready. So this is just your old jQuery. There you go. Let's try plugging something on the console. Lower. Oops. There you go. Let's try looking at that on our browser. There you go. Loads, and here it is on the right side on the console log. Okay, let's go back. So I'll be adding some of the stuffs that we might be needing. So okay, let's try adding a navbar for this example. Let's try adding an A to this one. So my application, it's a special title, 𝗕𝗂𝗂𝘂𝗏. Okay, and div class container. Is this right? Let's put it inside. Let's see if something changes. Oh yeah, I forgot to put color. So I want this one to be blue. Okay, let's see that in the browser. Okay, there you go. That's much better. Let's see if it. Guess I might need to change this into an H1 instead. Let's see if that works. Okay. Oh no, it's much bigger. Okay. Okay, great. So let's move forward. What do I want to put next? Okay, let's go back to the code. Let's try adding set of buttons, for example. But anyway, wait, let's try adding a title first. Like welcome. Let's add some. I set the body first to have a gray color. So gray, lighten, or that's this gray lighten one. Is this correct? I forgot. Okay. Oh yeah, that's definitely correct. Let's try making it 3. So. Still too dark. Okay, sorry, I forgot to kind of switch over the browser, but I just changed the color so that we can make this a little bit gray. Okay, so coming back to the code editor. Yeah, so basically we have a welcome in there. Let's try adding some buttons to make this a little bit interactive. Let's try adding an ID. So what do we want to call this? Sample button. Then let's try hello, or better click me. Let's do that. Okay, so what do we do next? Just adding a class, BT enlarge. Let's try making this blue darken. Let's darken this just a little bit. 3. Okay, let's look at the browser again, and there you go. There is. Still doesn't do anything yet. So let's try adding a function to that. Okay. Okay, so we'll be adding a listener to that. So when we click that, I forgot the ID. Okay, sample button. Nice. Sample button. So when we click that, what will happen is it'll show an alert for now. It'll show an alert to tell us that hello world. Okay, so let's see if it would work. Okay. Okay. Reload it first. Okay. Hey, it worked. Okay. So what if we try adding what if we try adding some online interactivity here? So let's try making a function. Let's say get from web. Okay, let's make this an asynchronous function. Okay, there you go. Then we'll be using the fetch API. So let's try looking for an API we can test. So I'm searching for an API we can use. Okay, so this one. Okay, so let's try using this one. So they have something like this. Okay. Does it work? Let's try. Oh yeah, it does. So let's work with page 1. So basically we'll be trying to get that on our page. So let's do that. And lazy. Let's define it here on top. There you go. So when we fetch once data, let's await that. Then let's transform that into a JSON type of data. Then let's try logging it first. Sol.log data. So when we click our sample button, it'll get from web. There you go. But I guess this should be async as well. Yeah, let's try making this an async. So you can await. Okay. There we go. I don't even know if this is needed, but let's try. Okay, so let's go to our browser again. Let's refresh it. Okay. Loads. I'll clear this first. Okay, it's clear. Try clicking it. There you go. It was able to retrieve that data. Okay, so we just need the data. Okay, let's try displaying each one of these on our page. Okay. Let's do just that. But first, okay, get people. Let's change that. Oh, sorry, I forgot to show you my screen. I mean my code editor again. My bad. Okay, so basically I changed it into get people. So yeah, basically what I did, was to add here at the sample button. So when we click it, it'll get. And yeah, let's try adding a container here, class. Oh no, let's not do that. ID people container. Oh no, let's do that. Okay, so we will be putting the cards here. So yeah, let's do that. So let's try checking if we have a data. Then okay, I forgot Structure, let me see. Okay, data. It's also people list. Am I correct? Is it a list? Yes. People list is equals to data.data. Or else it'll be. Okay. There you go. And then let's iterate over that. Let's okay. This would be an object. Then let's create a template for this one. So let's create a template for each card. Let's try making this. There's a card component at materialize. Let's use that card. Is this right? Okay, and let's try add into plus card content. Great. Let's try adding something in here. So let's try. So each one contains an ID, email, first name, last name. Yeah, ID, first name, last name, and its email. So let's try displaying the first name, but I think I might need to place an H5 in there. Let's do that. Oh no. There you go. What do you call it? obj dot first name, or if it doesn't contain anything, like anonymous, obj dot last name, or better yet, let's not put anything. Okay. Empty. I mean, yeah. Then inside, let's put the email. Okay, I think that looks nice. Yeah. Okay, it'll go over that list, and then once it does, what would we do next? Oh yeah, I forgot. Let's try emptying the list. Sorry. Let's try emptying that list. So what that list is people container. So let's try emptying that people container. Container. Yeah, correct. .html. Let's clear that. Set that empty. So we can append this one afterwards. So let's do that. People container dot append the template we just did. So yeah, let's see if this works. Okay, let's go back to our browser. I think we might not need this anymore. Yeah, we're not gonna do a pagination anyway, so let's try that. And oh wow, there you go. That's fast, right? So this will be our sample application. And with progressive web apps, we do need to consider experiences when people are offline. So let's try creating a template for when the user is offline. So let's do that. Offline card. So I will just show a card that says that you're offline, or let's say it kind of failed to get the data. So let's do that. Okay. Oh no, I forgot to. Anyway, what I did is just to add this line of code. Let's do that. Let's add class card. Okay. Okay. Just to make it fancy. There you go. Make this readable for other developers. Card. Container. Oh no, it's content. Oh yeah, kinda confused. content. Okay. Let's add in here. Let's add some style. Let's put this at the center. Next, align center. Am I doing this right? Yeah, I guess. And let's add class gray text. Go. Failed to get data. You may be online. Maybe offline. Or a system error occurred. Let's just add that. Just as a fallback. So let's catch our asynchronous function. Let's say e. Of course, we'll be displaying an error for this one. So let's log the error, of course, e. But make this an error. And so we still clean this up. So I guess we need to put this a little bit here on top, just to make sure we always clean that container. Okay, and let's put that card in there. So people container .html. Let's add this offline card. Offline card. So when we're offline, it'll still show something, or when it crashes, still show something in there. Okay. So let's try going to our browser by refreshing it. Okay, still empty. There you go. Let's try going offline. How do we do that? Application. Alright, yeah, let's try checking offline. Then let's try get people again. There you go. Failed to get data, you may be offline, or a system error occurred. So when you're offline, it would show you this card, or when something badly happens to our server, it would show that card as well. So I think that's cool. Okay, but currently cannot use the application offline because you're. Oh yeah, we're serving this locally. Oh wait, let's check. Let's try that. Oh wait. Oh no, what's going on? This shouldn't work. Kinda did. Oh, there you go. It shouldn't work, but wait, maybe I have something here first. I forgot to delete. Okay, there you go. Okay, so that's the service worker already kicking in, but that was for my previous application, so kind of cleared it up just to make this fresh. So basically, if you're offline, you would see this, and yeah, basically that's what you will have. So let's try adding the service worker now. Okay, so let's go back to our code editor and see, it's easy to build that. Okay, let's try adding the service worker. I'll copy some snippet. I'll copy some snippet from my okay, so this line of code does is, first it checks if service worker is available on my browser. That's why we have an if condition that checks if the service worker object is in the navigator object. I mean, if service worker is in there. So once it is in, if it is in there, it would add an event listener. So when the window loads, using the service worker that register method function, which is asynchronous, so we will register our service worker in there. So as you can see, it's located at serviceworker.js, which we'll be adding in a few. And yeah, we just listen. So once it's done, we will be logging that the service worker has been registered, along with the registration object or anything that it returns. So let's save that and make our service worker. Oh my, service worker .js file. Okay. What do we do next? Okay. I'll be copying from my. Okay. So let's try. Here are the basic parts. First is that I defined a version number in here, so which is 1. Actually, it could be any, like alpha or something, but it's up to you. Yeah, so basically we need to define the version number. We also defined an array of the list of that a list of versions that shouldn't be deleted when the page loads, or I mean when the service worker is being called, or it works. I mean the service worker is working. So also we added a list of resources that we need to cache offline, to cache or to save. So I may use save or cache interchangeably along this demo. So yeah, so we have the list of the items here. So we do have some event listeners in here. So how many is this? 3. 1, 2, 3. So the first one is that it's an install event. So service worker installs itself to the browser, and we can tell what's gonna happen with that. So since this is a script that acts as a client-side proxy, so we can basically modify the request that would be sent or coming. So we may choose to either get from the network or bar that request and instead send something from our cache, or even a custom response. So that this is pretty powerful. So but first let's start with the install. Yeah, so while that event is happening, we open the cache using the version we specified, which is 1. And once it opens that cache, we just add all of the files that we want to cache. So it'll cache it one by one. So it'll go from top to bottom, yeah. And then once it's done, it'll log done caching. Simple, right? So recap, we have here an install event for installing the service worker, and inside of that it would open a cache, a version of that cache, which is 1. And once it's open, we can put all of the files we want to store or save to that cache version. So this is version 1, and in version 1 all of the files in here are saved. So that's what it needs. Okay, so let's proceed to the next event, which is fetch. As I've told you that this is a client-side proxy, so it can intercept the request. So this is the method or the event that is that does the intercept. Okay, that intercepts the response and the request. So once it does a fetch event, we can kind of tweak that. So I've chosen to use, let's say if that certain resource is, let's say I'm trying to get index.html. So if it matches something from my cache, it would use that as a response. So use that as a response. But if ever in any case that I don't have that, or what, and so on and so forth, whatever, it'll get from the network. Probably, most likely it will. Yeah, it'll try to fetch it. It will proceed normally. So if not, what would happen? No, let's say it'll just fail. but most likely it won't. It either would just get from cache or get from network, and if it gets from network and it fails, the normal thing would happen. But when it's a post method to any path, and when it's not, it will always return the index.html. Just some basic rules, but the basics here is that what I did was when a certain request matches something from my cache, it would return from that cache first, and if it doesn't, or it's not properly cached, or it doesn't even defined in there, it will just get it from the network. So that's what it does. Also, the third listener, the third part of this is to listen when the service worker is being activated. So the install event is different from the activate event. So once it's installed, it won't always install. It will just go to being activated. So when it's activated, this is where we put our method or a procedure to delete the set of caches that are not in this list. So that's why we defined it here. So I just wanted to retain version 1. So every time that it activates that service worker, it will check for old versions of your app to basically clean the browser, the storage, or the cache, so that it wouldn't bloat largely. So we can also remove the old version from there. Yeah, so basically that's the service worker, right? It's fairly straightforward. But if you do not want to write this, or if you have lots of files, basically if you're using frameworks like frameworks or libraries like React or Angular, Vue, whatever, some of them do have built-in support. Some of them also, or if not, you can use Workbox, as I've said in my talk. Okay, so once we have that, I guess I'm okay with this for now. This is what I would be storing, except we don't have offline and stuff. Let's remove that. I don't have that yet. What else? Okay, I'm good with this one. Yeah, let's what if we try to see if it works? So let's go to our browser. So in here at our developer tools, you can see here we have manifest, which we'll be adding later. We also have one for service worker. So you can debug your service worker in here to see if it updates, installs, activates, and so on and so forth. You can even unregister it, just like what I did earlier. So let's try reloading this. Let's see if it would see that. And it does. It sees that code. We check, yes, this is what I just coded. And it's installed already, and it's already activated. So let's see the console. Oh yeah, here at the bottom. You can see that it is done in caching it. It's done installing, and it was able to cache the version 1. So let's try going offline this time. Okay, so we're offline. And you see? Let's try force refreshing it. There you go. It still loads. It still loads. So, right? You wouldn't see the offline page anymore. But the thing with this one is that's why we added a fallback for our fetch earlier to get the API data. Because when we're offline, we also need to handle that experience. So for example, I'll be clicking get people when I'm offline. So it will show something to me when I am offline. So this is basically a paradigm shift, basically, from the traditional web development that you know. Because, well, if you are accustomed to older way of doing it, then most likely you are not yet handling scenarios like if you're offline, those kinds of scenarios. But now you do have to think about this. What would happen if that user is offline or not? So you do have to code that. So this is the first scenario. You can choose to just show them the data. I mean, you may just show them a message that you are offline and so on and so forth. But another option for you is to save it locally using either local storage or session storage. So we can definitely do that. So let's try, instead of just showing this, what if we try to show the list, store it when we are online, we will store the list. So when we're offline, we can still show the list we just got. So we can definitely do that. So let's try that. So we need to tweak this a little bit. Okay. So let's say it's successful. So if data or not. Okay. So anyway, what I'll do is just to store this offline. Let's do that. No. Let's use local storage, and just to stringify that people list. So every time we're online, it'll just store the list of people to our local storage. Yeah, let's try doing that. I think I need to make a that would be too long. So instead of showing the card, so let's comment this out. Let's fetch from our local storage. Let's define our people list as JSON parse. What do you call this? Local storage dot get item, which is, what did I use? Oh no, I forgot to add something here. Yes. People list. Here you go. So to retrieve it, we need people list. Okay. Here you go. So if people list, then let's instead of making a function, just copy this to make this a little bit faster. Let's also add this one. Okay, great. Let's do that. So every time we are offline or something happened, it can check. It can check if we have it in there. So, but let's try adding an else block and move the block here. So just in case that we do not have it yet, we can still show the error. So it's not totally it's not that we wouldn't get anything. So it'll still show the offline card if in case it's nothing is stored yet. So let's do that. Let's let's force refresh instead. Let's force refresh. Okay, I guess it's updating that. Let's try oh yeah, why am I offline? I'll just unregister this first, or better yet, let's clear the site data just to ensure that nothing's stored. There you go. Let's see. Okay. Oh my, I forgot to share the browser. But what I basically did is just to clear the site data. Clear site data, and once it's cleared, refreshed it. Okay, and we here. Okay. So don't mind this one. The one on my right, bottom right, is deleted. The one that's working is here on the top. Okay, so let's try going offline right now. Let's see if it would work. Guess it wasn't able to catch that, but regardless, let's try getting it first. Okay, and try going offline. Oh, let's see if it's stored first. And yes, it did. It's able to store it here on the right side, if you can see. Let's try going offline and refreshing that, and try to get it, and see. Yeah, it's not something we might use, but yeah, it was able to get it right. So you may do either of the two. You may show a card that tells the user if he's offline or not, or store the data that you just got so the user can still interact with the application when he or she is still offline. So you may choose any. It's up to you. Choose which better user experience is the best. Okay. Yeah, so that's cool. But we still need a thing. We need to have our manifest. So the manifest, if you're accustomed to native app development, that's where you put the icons and activities and stuff. So that's almost as probably that's the closest thing, or the equivalent actually of that here. So let's try adding that. So how do we add it? So we need to put a meta tag on top that contains our, what do you call that, the meta tag that we have, or the meta tag, the manifest that we have, manifest that we have. I'll be putting here on top. So basically it's like a CSS in terms of linking, but here the relation, the rel or the relation is, it's a manifest. So we do that. I think we need to put it here as well on our service worker. Let's try adding that manifest.json so that it's cached. Okay. Great. So let's try adding the file manifest.json. So as I've said, it's a JSON file that contains the info or the metadata about our application. So here, coming from our to-do sample, so let's try changing this before I explain. Okay, my application. Okay, so the name, it has a name, a short name. You can choose the color you want, the background color for the splash screen. You may choose to either display it standalone or in full screen. The scope is where it'll be available. So let's say you want to make it available under /test or /app, you may do so. But if it's like this, it'll be at the root, like what we're doing right now. Start URL. So when you install your progressive web app, this will be loaded. So you can actually try adding this one, yes, so that you would know it's a PWA, or open something like login or PWA. It's up to you. And then you define your icons here. Actually, there are other things you can add here, like description, which is coming very soon, be made available. Let's try adding one, a sample app, and you can add icons in here. You just need to define the location, the size, what type it is, and you may choose, and there are other things you can add to it. So yeah, let's see if it gets detected on our browser when we load it. So let's try going to our browser. Let's clear everything again. Okay, so you can see our service worker is deleted. Let's refresh this. See, we're offline. Of course we're offline. Of course we're offline. Okay, let's reload this one. There you go. It loads that. It's still installing, and it's activated. You can see here on my right side the manifest we just added. So the name, short name, the start URL, theme color that I did, the background color, and orientation if I wanted to make it as a standalone or full screen, and the icons that I've defined. So yeah, it's our logo. Yeah, so really feels like an app development on its own, right? Because it is. This is an app. Great. So yes, you can see that we've added everything we need. So we can try performing a lighthouse report. So let's check if it's a PWA. Let's add that anyway. I could check if you do have the necessary things. It would give you a score. It would test it if it works offline, if it does all of the great things that PWA should be doing. So let's try performing this audit. And hopefully it gives us a high score. Okay. Let's just wait for it. There you go. But yeah, let's not be concerned about this because this is yeah. So it's installable already. So since it tells us that it's installable, we can actually install it. Oh wait, let's see. Yeah, it asks for a theme color. Let's try adding that. We can fix the meta tag the next time, but for now let's just add the theme color. Now let's go back. Anyway, let's try adding it so that passes. But we're not gonna do the audit anymore since we see that it passes. It's already installable by this time. So you can add the other stuffs like theme color. You add the necessary tags here just to make it better. So let's go back to the browser and head over to, let's close this. Let's try installing it actually. So now you can install it, and once it passes that requirement, you can see that you can already install it. Oh my, you can't see it. How would I make you see it? Wait. I'll switch this over to a desktop view. Okay. I hope that you can see my display. It's still not. You can still see it. Okay. Let's try this one. Can you see it? Oh no, you can't. Anyway, I'll take a screenshot of it and show it to you. Maybe because of security reasons, that's why. And took a screenshot of it. Let's there you go. So this is what it'll look like. It's already a PWA. You can deploy it to your web server and make your users install it. So yeah, I think this is the essentials. Or you can say that you're successful in building a progressive web app once you're able to make this pop up when it's installable. Some reminders. Of course, you do need to provide an offline experience because your users will definitely sometimes be on offline. So you do need to think always about that scenario. Also, make it load fast. You always try to make it load fast. Do optimizations as much as possible. And with that ends my session. If you're an Android user, then most likely you were already able to somehow download an app or a game through Google Play. Google Play is the official distribution platform for Chromebooks and Android devices. It allows Android and Chromebook users to discover and download apps to their devices. So what are the benefits of an app store like Google Play? First is that it's familiar, since this is almost the de facto way of actually getting an app to your device, to your Android device. Next is that it's discoverable, since you have a search function in Google Play where you just search for the name of the app and you can install it from there. Also, it's wide reach. Since majority of Android devices have Google Play on them, then your reach is all of them if you'd like to. And also, it's trusty since most app stores have or actually all app stores have policies in place. This guarantees that your users are safe and you're safe as well. Yeah, so we are going to take advantage of this benefit to like reach, to even target more users to use our progressive web app. So the traditional way, so if you're an Android developer, then you're mostly accustomed to the traditional way of wrapping a progressive web app or any web app or any HTML content for that matter in a web view. So if you remember, or if you don't remember, it's okay. WebView is more of like a basic browser where you can display an HTML content or even display a web, or even load a website or a web app in your application. The thing about WebView is that you do need to set it up, and it's not easy to make. That could be a friction to users, to some developers, because you do have to take care of a lot of things. Like you do have to turn on JavaScript, or you do have to handle the button, like the back button, for it to work. And it's not a total secure solution, since it could be hijacked and so on and so forth. That's why we're not going to use that, since there's a newer technology to better package your progressive web app, and that is a trusted web activity. Well, basically, a trusted web activity is a type of custom tab. So a custom tab is a certain feature where, as an app, you can make the browser load up a page and display it on your app. So instead of you creating a web view and handling the button and so on and so forth, the browser does it for you. That's why it's a custom tab. But the difference of a trusted web activity is that you do have to prove that you own that resource or that app using a certain process called a digital asset link, which we will be discussing later. So yeah, it's a safer way and easier way, because you don't necessarily have to instantiate a web view object and so on and so forth. That is just way longer. And also, when app development or Android development comes into mind, then most likely you're thinking about Android Studio. So the thing here is that we're not going to use that. It's a great tool, but we're not going to use that for this activity, since there is a better tool that Microsoft had built for us to easily package our progressive web app, and that is called PWA Builder. Very straightforward. So PWA Builder, which you can open via pwabuilder.com, is a tool founded by Microsoft to promote adoption of progressive web apps. Basically, it allows everyone to turn their website into an app, or from a website to a progressive web app. And it also allows everyone to package their PWAs and easily distribute it to different stores. So yeah, it's really awesome. And this is almost a no-code way to package a progressive web app so that you can distribute it through stores. So this is how it looks like. Once you open pwabuilder.com, you'll be greeted by a welcome screen where you can put the URL of your progressive web app. So when you put it there and click start, it would then analyze the address. So it would check if your web app has all of the necessary requirements needed for it to function offline and so on and so forth, like a manifest and Surface Worker and the ability to work offline, so on and so forth. And it'll have a score. So when it passes that score, you can build your PWA already. So just click the Build My PWA button on the top right portion of that. And once you do that, you'll be shown with the different platforms where you can distribute your progressive web app. So we have here Android, of which we'll be using in a while. You can also choose Samsung Galaxy devices, which is somehow also Android. You can also choose to bring it over to Windows or Mac OS, which is cool. Since progressive web apps are also good for desktops, you may also choose to distribute it over the Microsoft Store or through the App Store of Mac OS. You can do that. But for this one, since we're going to bring it over to the Play Store, we'll be choosing Android for this activity. So when you click that, you will be shown with a modal or dialog where you can already download the package, or you may choose options. If you're going to just test your the package that would be created, you can definitely click on download. But since we are going to distribute it to the Play Store, we need to tweak some of the settings in there just to kind of customize it. So you can choose options for that. And once you do that, you can see that you can change the package ID, app name, icons, but it's kind of pre-filled. It's from the manifest file your progressive web app has, but you can change it freely if you'd like to. You can change the icons and so forth. You can do that definitely. You can even change the status bar color, the nav bar color, and so on and so forth. You can choose to either it'll be a standalone app or it'll open in full screen. You may choose to have notifications, or you can even include the source code if you download the zip file. You may choose that. And the important thing why we chose options, because we wanted to personally sign the package that it will be generating. If you're accustomed to Android development, then you know that you do have to sign that package using your key. You need to have a key, so we can do that here. So if you do not have a key yet, you may choose to create one, and if you do have, you may choose that as an option as well. So for example here, let's say I do not have yet. Okay, so you may choose to fill that up, and then once you're done, go through the changes, and then you may click done and download the zip file. So the zip file would contain the following. Okay, so it has probably around 6 files. The most important are the packages. So you have two. You have the Android app bundle and you have the APK file. So you may choose any of that. We also have a README if you do need to read more about what you need to do next after downloading the package. And there's the signing key that we just created. So if you just created one, it will be included here. And this, you can use this to actually sign other applications that you'll be building in the future. So, and there's also a digital asset link, and it's associated to the APK file. So the digital assets link is what will build the trust between the Android device and the web app. So you need to put this into your web server so that once you, let's say you open the app, it'll try to look for that file to see if it matches the signature of that app, and if it matches that, then it would be treated as a trusted resource or web app. So then it could display it in a full screen manner or without the tab. So this is the sample of it. It contains some data about it, like the fingerprint, the 𝗕𝗂𝗏𝗏𝗀256 fingerprint of the app. So you do have that, and you need to put it in the well-known folder and have the file name as assets_link.json. So for example, you put it there already, and this should look like this. It's publicly accessible, so yeah. Anyway, speaking of, it's related to the APK file. So If you do want to use the Android app bundle for putting the package to the Play Store, you may need to generate this digital asset link, and you can do that by downloading Peter's asset link tool that's available on Google Play. So you can get the digital asset link file or the fingerprint and put it over to your website or web app or server. Okay, so once that's done, we can now proceed to the Google Play console. So it's accessible via play.google.com/app/publish. And this is the tool that allows developers like you and me to easily distribute apps and games to the Play Store. So this is where you will put the package. But the thing about this is that it requires a $25 one-time fee for a developer account. That's around 1,220 pesos. But that's just a one-time fee you need to pay. Yeah, but once you have paid for that fee, you would have a developer account and you can access the console. And the console looks like this. Okay, so for example, let's put the package. So you just click on Create App, fill up the necessary information like the app name, you declare if it's an app or a game, choose if it's free or paid, then upload the screenshots of it. Include you can even choose which logo you want or icon you want in there. Once that's done, you can also put the description, so forth. Upload the package, and once it's done, it'll be listed after being checked by Google Play. So it'll then be available for download for users. It's just really cool. So imagine your web app, your progressive web app, can be downloaded through Google Play. That's cool, right? So it's done. So let's just go through some reminders and tips. Okay. So the goal here is to distribute progressive web apps to the Play Store. So just because you can bring over web apps doesn't mean that we can be reckless about it. So make sure to not ever distribute packaged website on Google Play or any app store. When I say that, to never ever distribute packaged website, I mean that your progressive web app should be interactive enough. It shouldn't be just a hello world type of app or a type of website, because it would definitely be just a spam on the platform. When we bring something to an app store, it should be something usable by everyone or a certain group of user. If it's a game, it should be entertaining. If it's an app, it should be interactive and it needs to do something, so as to not pollute the platform. And with that, since this is governed by policies, you do have to follow the guidelines that the store provides. So since this is Google Play, you can visit play.google.com/about/developer-content-policy for the policy set by Google Play. You do have to follow that, or else you might be removed from the store. And also design progressive web apps to be apps with complete offline functionality or fallback. It needs to work offline, and it doesn't have to fully work completely offline, but you need to provide at least some kind of offline interface or interaction so that it feels like an app. And also optimize for low speed connections, since people will be using your app and not all of them have unlimited data or have a fast speed. So you do need to think about that always. when building or when packaging or bringing your progressive web app to Google Play. Okay, so I guess that's the end of my talk. So thank you. Hope that you were able to learn more about progressive web apps, and I do hope that you are going to choose progressive web apps in building your solution.